else is asking us questions? Looks like somebody from New Zealand. We went from New Jersey to New Zealand. We went from Harry to John. John from New Zealand asks, hey, I've got a question. But first, I wish to say thanks for your interesting and informative YouTube videos. Very good indeed. Well, thank you, John. I appreciate that. Hey, a while back, you did a video on the wee little 6.5 Grendel, and you pointed out that it is a surprisingly effective round. And it's medium game, effective, I'm not really sure I recall exactly, but I think you recommended to over 300-pound animals. All of this stuff about energy is a bit much for my simple brain, so what I want to know is killing power. That is, how good is it at getting the job done? Good question. I did some digging around, and to my surprise, I discovered, I think, that the Grendel had quite a bit more killing power than the heaviest good old 243 Winchester load. Is this really right? Is the Grendel better than a 243 at putting down medium-sized game? And is the killing power score, or the Hornady HITS, that's HITS score, the full story anyway? Be interested in doing a video on it. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of stuff there, John, but I've done some videos on killing power. I do a lot of them. I harp quite a bit about knockdown power because I think it's kind of a myth and it gets way oversold in the industry. So first of all, let's go back to your Grendel and 243. The little 6.5 Grendel, that thing is throwing probably 129 grain bullet about through 2,300 feet per second, maybe 2,350. 243 equivalent, you can't get that heavy, so we'll go with 100 grain, and that's usually 3,000 to 3,100 top end. So figure those two out, and then you've got the BCs of the bullet. Now, boy, you've got a 200-300 foot advantage if the BCs of the bullet are close, and I think they would be. You're getting up into those high fours, probably on both of those. So the weights are a little bit different. So that gives an advantage in energy to the 6.5 Grendel, but the lower velocity gives more advantage to the 243. And I'm thinking out at about 400 yards, you're going to be looking at 500 foot-pounds of retained energy in that 6.5 Grendel 129 grain bullet. 400 to 600 range, so we'll split the difference, say 5. And it's about the same for a 243, if I remember my ballistic tables. 243 Winchester 100 grain bullet, 300 yards, you might still be hanging on to 1,000 foot-pounds. 400 yards, you still might have it, 900 to 1,000. But then after that, I'm thinking the 243 is carrying more kinetic energy at those distances. But now you have to figure the momentum in the bullet because of its mass. And there's where the Grendel bullet could have a little bit of an advantage. So you might get a little more penetration, even though you're not landing with as much energy. And this is where all the complications come in, is how does this energy, the kinetic energy, that's energy in motion, how does that translate to actual terminal performance? Well, so much of it is dependent on the bullet, the constructions in the material, how it expands or doesn't expand. And as far as knockdown power, neither one of those has enough power to knock anything down, but, small little ground squirrel or something. You're not going to be knocking a deer over with either one of them. And that's really not the objective. And that's one of my gripes, too, is that so many hunters insist on this macho knockout stuff. When your objective, what's happening is that you are creating hemorrhaging to the vital organs, and that's what takes the animal. That's why bow hunters are so successful with broadheads. It's not energy. You just need enough energy for the arrow to get there and that sharp broadhead to cut through to reach the vitals and preferably pass out the other side. Archers are always looking for the pass-through because then they get good blood trail. Same thing works with bullets. It just doesn't seem that way because we feel the recoil and we hear the noise and we think, boy, there's just a lot of macho punch going on here. And that's what's taking them out, by golly. But it's really just the hemorrhaging. The bullet has to get in there and damage the vital organs, cause the hemorrhaging, and then you've got him. So I wouldn't get too excited about it either way, John. I think those two are pretty darn close. And I don't know on this HITS, that is interesting. The Hornady HITS is a system by which Hornady ranks cartridges and the bullets that they're shooting based on bullet diameter, bullet mass, and the energy. And I think they do it, if I remember right, at 100 yards. What's going to be happening at 100 yards with, say, the 22 250 or the 220 Swift? versus the 243 versus the 270 and on up the scale. Each one of them will have their little category, and they're going to say, well, this one will put out a number correlation of some kind that correlates then to the size of the animal. And they group the animals into smaller animals would be, I think, under 500 pounds. 500 to 1,000 pounds would be medium size, 1,000 and up or something, elk, moose and all, and then dangerous game at 1,500 and up. And it's like that Winchester CX category thing. You'll see it on the boxes of Winchester animals. This is suitable for C2 class animals, and they'll have a picture of a deer on it, a whitetail or something. And then they've got 1, 2, 3, I think 4 different categories. And others have created systems like this, including the Taylor knockout formula, which was actually designed to showcase how a bullet would knock out an elephant. So it really doesn't apply to chest shot game of any kind. But people want this kind of information to get assurances that the bullet in the cartridge they're shooting is going to be effective. And I credit Hornady and all the others who make these because they're trying to help us out by giving us a general idea of this cartridge is good for deer and maybe elk, kind of falls in the middle there somewhere, whereas this other one is way too small. The problem, of course, is that there are always exceptions. I mean, I remember looking up the 243 on the Hornady HITS one time, and it made it into the lower end of the deer-sized game category. Not really highly recommended as the ultimate for deer-sized game, and definitely didn't fall into the elk-sized game. Yet I had a friend once who had taken 13 bull elk with 13 shots from a 243. And they were big bull elk too. I think every one of them was a 5x5 or a 6x6. So seemed to work pretty well that time. And then there are so many people who report that they get their most dramatic and effective kills with a 223 Remington or a 220 Swift. So it's not absolute, but it does give you a fair idea. I wouldn't depend on it to tell me that I have to use a certain cartridge and I absolutely can't use a different one. And then the bullet construction, of course, is going to change a lot of that too. But it's worth looking into. I would suggest you get on the Hornady site and look up that HITS score, get on Winchester's and see what you can find out about their CX system, and even do some research on Taylor's knockout formula. A lot of guys will report on that. Too many of them, I'm afraid, not fully understanding that he developed that around the elephants that he was hunting. The bullet would knock out an elephant if he just missed the brain, didn't actually hit it. I would knock an elephant out and then it would recover after so many minutes. And he timed all that stuff. So he could say, okay, the 375 with a near miss, the elephant's going to get up in 30 seconds. And then the 416 Rigby, he'd get up in a minute and a half or whatever it was. So he developed his formula on that. And then guys try to apply it to shooting a moose in the chest. It just doesn't work that way. All right. That was a good one. Whew, I went on and on with that one, John.